Hi, good morning. I hope you're all enjoying this remote teaching method. In today's class, we are going to do the second part of the lesson, The Sound of Music. This section is titled The Shehnai of Bismillah Khan. In the first section, we read about Evelyn Glennie, and I told you to do an assignment on Mozart and Beethoven. Hope you all have done that. If you have done the assignment, then you must have got an idea of Western classical music. The title of the second section is The Shehnai of Bismillah Khan. So I hope you know who is Ustad Bismillah Khan. Who is Ustad Bismillah Khan? He is a very famous Indian musician who plays the Shehnai. Now, do you know what is a Shehnai? The Shehnai is an instrument used in North Indian classical music. I suggest you do this assignment to get an idea about Indian classical musicians. You can go and Google it and find out the names of some Indian classical musicians. Now, let's get back to the lesson. On page 21 of Beehive, you can see the pictures of some famous musicians of India. They are all instrumentalists who practice Indian classical music. Can you tell me their names? But if I ask you the name of a famous keyboardist and pianist from Kerala, whom you always see on stage shows, I'm sure you'll immediately give me the answer, isn't it? Have you guessed it? Do you know who I'm talking about? Yes, I'm talking about Stephen Devsey. Now, let's talk a little bit about Indian classical music. Well, I'm not an expert on any classical music, but this is just general knowledge which everybody knows. So in Indian classical music, there are two variants. One is the Hindustani, the other is the Carnatic. Carnatic music is associated with South India and Hindustani music belongs to North India. Here we are talking about Hindustani music because Ustad Bismillah Khan belongs to North India. In the beginning of this chapter, we read about the origin of the Shehnai. It is written here that Emperor Aurangzeb banned the playing of a musical instrument called the pungi because of its unpleasant sound. And we read on to understand that Shehnai is the instrument that replaced it. On page 22, paragraph 2, we also read that the sound of the Shehnai began to be considered auspicious, and for this reason it is still played in temples and is an indispensable component of any North Indian wedding. So you see, Shehnai is the instrument played during weddings and in temple concerts. So, I don't want you to confuse this with the Nadasaram, which is played in South India, because Shehnai is an instrument of North Indian Hindustani classical music. Ustad Bismillah Khan was born in Bihar in 1916. He belongs to a family of well-known musicians. At the age of 3, he moved to Benares with his mother. There he studied music from his uncle, who was employed at the temple of Benares as a musician. His uncle Ali Bugs taught him to play the Shehnai while he was living in Benares. And young Bismillah Khan used to practice the Shehnai on the banks of the river Ganga and in the temple of Balaji and Mangal Maya. On page 23, the first paragraph towards the end, we read, "The flowing waters of the Ganga inspired him to improvise and invent ragas that were earlier considered to be beyond the range of the Shehnai." So, Ustad Bismillah Khan himself says that he was inspired by the river Ganga and the temples of Banaras to play the Shehnai. While we read about the experience of Bismillah Khan in Banaras, we get a glimpse of the rich cultural heritage of India. That is, in spite of being a devout Muslim, he used to play the Shehnai every morning at the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Banaras. We see Ustad Bismillah Khan's attachment to Banaras, and this brings us to the theme of this lesson. What do you think is the underlying message? Ustad Bismillah Khan believed that music had no religion, and he mainly practiced his music in a Hindu city, even though he was a Muslim, and this enforced in him a secular spirit. From the life of Ustad Bismillah Khan, we get the message that music transcends all barriers of race, religion, and geography. At the age of 14, Ustad Bismillah Khan started giving performances on stage. He used to perform abroad also in various countries. He performed at the All India Radio often, and he also performed in 1947 on August 15th when India got independence. He was awarded all the 4 highest civilian awards. The Padma Shri in 1961, the Padma Bhushan in 1968, the Padma Vibhushan in 1980, and the Bharat Ratna in 2001. Do you know that there is an auditorium named after Ustad Bismillah Khan in Tehran? Now that we have discussed so much about Ustad Bismillah Khan, let's come to the title, the Shehnai of Bismillah Khan. Yes, it is Ustad Bismillah Khan who made the Shehnai so popular and took it to a global audience. He also elevated its status in Indian classical music by improvising and inventing new ragas to suit the Shehnai. So this explains the appropriateness of the title. Since it was Ustad Bismillah Khan who elevated the status of the Shehnai in Indian classical music, it's always right to call it The Shehnai of Ustad Bismillah Khan.